Keira, Vincent, and your sister are engaged now, so stop trying to break them up. We have already bought you a plane ticket. Spend the next few years abroad. Come back only after Kim married. Keira York looked at her parents, who acted like they meant well. Only then did she realize that she had been reborn. She was back to the day her parents forced her to go abroad and give up on Vincent later. In her past life, her parents had also tried to convince her to leave, but she had been unwilling. She explained to Vincent time and time again that she was the one he was supposed to like. She begged her parents countless times to tell the truth instead of letting her sister Kim York take the credit for what she'd done. Yet in the end, she only made Vincent hate her more. When her life had hung in the balance after getting into an accident, a nurse had called Vincent. However, he had merely said coldly, "This is just another trick she is pulling. Tell her not to ruin my and Kim wedding." Keira had ultimately died during the operation. She had watched the global live stream of the wedding of the century. She had spectated as Vincent lovingly slipped a wedding band onto Kim's finger. She had watched as everyone blessed them. Since heavens had given her another chance at life, she would not be so pathetic and dumb this time around. She reached out for the flight ticket and said calmly, "All right, I will go." Her parents, Frank and Melinda, were surprised by her decisiveness. "Are you really willing to go, Keira? This isn't another scheme you have cooked up to ruin things for Kim, is it?" "Ruin things for Kim? How ridiculous." Vincent was supposed to be hers, but they had snatched him away so Kim could have him. Over 20 years ago, Kim was diagnosed with leukemia. Frank and Melinda had not hesitated to have another child just to save her, and so Keira was born. Her umbilical cord blood had saved Kim, but she had lived in the latter's shadow ever since. Because of her poor health, Frank and Melinda gave Kim all the love they had. Since childhood, Keira had given up everything for Kim, her room friends, and spot in competition. The only thing Keira had refused to give up was Vincent, the heir to the Slater family, and the person for whom she had fallen in love at first sight. He was once a golden boy who stood high above the rest, but he had lost his vision in an accident after a birthday celebration. From then on, the Slater family had banished him to a villa in the suburbs. Keira had stolen the key to the villa behind his family back. Every day after school, she would climb over the wall and run into the villa to keep him company. "I will come every day." Her sweet voice became Vincent's only salvation in the darkness. She had never told him her name. All she had done was write on his palm, "Call me Kiki." Vincent had combed her hair and played the piano for her. He had also pressed her cold hands to his chest on a stormy night. The night before his operation, he had kissed her fingertips and made a vow. "You are the first person I want to see when I regain my vision. We will get together when the time comes, okay?" His operation had lasted 12 hours, but when he regained consciousness, Kim was the first person he saw. That was thanks to Frank and Melinda. After learning that Kim also had a crush on Vincent, they had laced Keira water with sleeping pills, conking her out for a day and night. Then they had lied to Vincent, telling him that Kim had spent those days and nights by his side, and so Kim had successfully taken Keira's place. Vincent never suspected a thing. He and Kim got together and eventually got engaged, seemingly head over heels for each other. Over the next 3 years, Keira tried countless times to tell Vincent the truth, that she was the one who'd been by his side and that she was the one he should love. He had never believed her, not even until the day she died. Keira looked at Frank and Melinda, finding their reactions laughable. "You kept pushing me to leave, and now that I've agreed, you don't believe me. Isn't that a bit contradictory?" "That's not what we meant. It's good that you're willing to go. You'll leave for the country in half a month, so take this time to pack your things and deal with whatever you need to." Frank and Melinda were worried she would go back on her word, so they reminded her of a few things before they left happily. Keira returned to her room. Her phone buzzed as soon as she shut the door. It was a text from Vincent. "Come to the Grain at 8 p.m. tonight, room 1808. She tightened her grip on her phone when she saw that. In her past life, she'd been overjoyed upon receiving this text. She had thought that Vincent was finally willing to listen to her explanation, but when she got there, she realized he just wanted her to witness him in bed with Kim so that she would give up on him. At the time, she had broken down in tears. However, he'd merely said coldly, "You saw us, so I'm sure you know what this means. Your sister is the only one I love." In hindsight, she thought she was so pathetic. Keira took a deep breath and replied, "Okay." She arrived at the Grain at 8 p.m. sharp. The door to room 1808 wasn't locked. Vincent and Kim were inside naked as the day they were born entangled with each other. Used condoms were scattered across the floor, and the room reeked of sex. Kim couldn't help screaming when she saw Keira standing outside the room. Meanwhile, Vincent lowered his head to press kisses to her collarbone. He said tenderly, "Don't be scared. I called Keira here to prove to her that you're the one I love. This way she'll stop fantasizing about being with me and accept that I'll only ever be her brother-in-law." This was Keira's second chance at life, and her second time witnessing this scene. Still, she felt like she'd been stabbed in the heart. It was a bloody mess, and she was in agony. However, she knew that she had to get used to it. After all, Vincent would never be anything more than her brother-in-law. She had no idea how much time had passed before she finally unclenched her fists, her palms marked where her nails had dug in. She watched as Vincent approached her fully dressed. "You saw that, right? Your sister is the only one I love. Know your place and get it into your head that I'm your brother-in-law. Stop doing those shameless things," he said. Keira looked at him emotionlessly. "I saw and I understand." He was taken aback, seemingly surprised that she was so calm. After a moment, he picked up an invitation from the bedside table and handed it to her. "Kim and I are getting married next month. I hope you'll be there." Keira accepted it. "I will. I wish you both all the happiness in the world." Vincent studied her closely, a slight furrow in his brow. He thought that she was being extraordinarily compliant for some reason. He didn't question her, though. He merely held Kim's hand and led her out of the hotel. Keira followed them, her footsteps heavy. Her head was lowered, and she was distracted. Suddenly, she heard a piercing scream come from beside her. A second later, a massive overhead light crashed down without warning. Vincent instinctively pulled Kim into his arms, shielding her as he backed away, avoiding the light. Meanwhile, Keira was left alone as the light fell on her, making her collapse on the floor in a pool of blood. Pain crashed over her in waves, gnawing away at her nerves. She was in such agony that she trembled violently while lying there. Tears rolled down her face and blurred her vision. The last thing she saw before shutting her eyes was Vincent holding Kim protectively. The young man she kept in her heart would never return, and she could finally let him go. Keira found herself in the hospital when she opened her eyes again. 2 nurses were changing her bandages. They sighed in relief when they saw her awake. One said, "Thank God you are finally awake. You've been out for 2 days. How do you feel?" "Your sister fainted the other day out of shock when bringing you to the hospital, so your parents and brother-in-law are caring for her in the ward next door. Should I ask them to come over?" Keira's lashes fluttered slightly, and she shook her head. "It's fine. They won't want to see me, and I feel the same." A trace of pity flashed in the nurse's eyes. Then, they turned to leave the ward. Their actual sisters. This one ended up in the ICU due to severe blood loss, yet her family didn't even ask about her. They only cared about the older sister, who was just scared. They didn't drop by to see how this one was doing at all. "I heard that her brother-in-law is Slater Group's CEO. I suppose it's normal for her parents to neglect her since her sister will marry into such an affluent family. Her brother-in-law is really devoted, though. He hasn't left her sister's side, and he made sure to feed her all her meals. He even asked a retired psychologist to drop by to speak to her, so she isn't traumatized. You should have seen the gifts he prepared to comfort her." "They haven't stopped coming," the 2 nurses whispered among themselves, but Keira heard every single word. From beginning to end, her face remained devoid of emotion. She was already used to things being this way. That afternoon, the doctor called Keira for a follow-up. She didn't have anyone to accompany her, so she had no choice but to drag her weak body out of bed. As she passed by the ward next door, she saw her parents and Vincent surrounding Kim and showering her with concern. Frank tucked her blanket around her, and Melinda fed her some grapes. She smiled sweetly and said, "You guys haven't left my side to see how Keira is doing, Mom and Dad. I'm full now, so you can take the rest of this fish dish to her. She's so badly injured that she needs something nutritious to give her a boost. Oh, don't worry about her. She'll survive wherever she is. Your mother put her heart and soul into this dish. It would be a waste giving it to Keira," Frank said without hesitation. Melinda nodded in agreement. Vincent tucked Kim's hair behind her ear. the tenderness in his eyes practically spilling over. Kim, the doctor said you fainted because you were too worried. Keira has always been cold-blooded, and she's never cared about your relationship with her. She even dared fantasize about taking me away from you. Why bother about her? Keira smiled self-deprecatingly when she heard his harsh words. She was allergic to seafood and couldn't have any of it, but it was Kim's favorite, and so they had to have seafood for every meal at home. Keira couldn't have any of it, so she usually stuck to vegetables and fruits. Each time Frank and Melinda would berate her for being a picky eater. Kim acted like she cared about Keira before outsiders. However, when they were alone, her mockery of Keira never stopped. Sometimes she would even get physical. Worse still, she would act like Keira was the one who'd bullied her after giving the latter a beating. Frank and Melinda never bothered finding out what had really happened. Once they punished Keira by making her kneel in the rain for a whole night. From then on, Keira had made sure to keep her distance from Kim. She gave Kim whatever she wanted, no matter what it was. In her past life, Vincent was the only thing she tried to fight for, yet she met a horrible end as a result. In this life, she simply wanted to live her own life peacefully. She didn't want to fight for anything or love anyone anymore. Keira went to her follow-up appointment alone. She then retrieved her medication after getting the prescription. The pharmacy was in a different block, and she needed to walk through the hospital's garden to get there. Someone stopped her as she passed a pond. She looked up to see Kim standing there. The latter said sarcastically, well. I didn't think you would be out of bed so soon. I guess that means you weren't that badly injured after all. Listen up, trash. Mom and Dad are on my side, so there's no point telling Vincent you were the one by his side all those years, and that you're the one he actually likes. Don't waste your time. Keira remained calm in the face of her provocation. Don't worry. I won't harbor any feelings for Vincent from now on, and I'll give you whatever you want. Kim was used to Keira never fighting back when bullied, and her expression grew smug. Give me? Do I need you to give me anything? I've gotten everything I've wanted since I was young. You're only worthy of getting the trash I cast aside. You'll never be better than me. Keira didn't want to be goaded by Kim's provocation, so she sidestepped the latter to leave. Kim frowned when she saw that Keira was trying to leave. She was about to continue shouting at the latter when a familiar figure appeared in the corridor. An idea suddenly occurred to her. She grabbed Keira's arm and dragged her down into the pond. Neither of them could swim, so they splashed around and struggled in the water while crying for help. Keira's wounds opened again, and her blood dyed the water crimson. The cold water filled her nose and mouth, choking her and making her cough violently. She was in so much pain that she lost the strength to struggle. She slowly sank to the bottom of the pond. Just as she was about to asphyxiate, she saw Vincent run to them and jump into the water. He swam past her without even sparing her a glance or helping her. He headed straight for Kim and pulled her out of the water. She threw herself into his arms, her eyes red as she looked at Keira, who was still in the water. She acted like she was worried as she said, Keira accidentally pushed me in. Vincent, you know I only have one sister. Can you save her, please? His expression turned ugly at her words, and he turned to look at Keira. Stop speaking up for her, Kim. She must have been trying to kill you. She even jumped in to make the act seem convincing. Since she hasn't learned her lesson, she can stay in the water until she does. Keira heard him, and his words hit like a knife to the chest. Her face flushed purple from holding her breath too long. A sharp buzzing filled her ears. As her strength drained away, her vision blurred, and she slowly began to slip out of consciousness. She watched as Vincent left with Kim in his arms. Then she fainted. Keira didn't know how long she'd been out, but she was awakened by a cold gust of wind. She shivered and opened her eyes to see Frank and Melinda standing before her with equally steely looks on their faces. How dare you push Kim into the water? Were you trying to kill her so you could take her place and be with Vincent? That won't ever happen for as long as your father and I are alive. You can't compare to Kim in any way, and you're totally unworthy of Vincent. Accept reality and stop fantasizing about changing this. Melinda snapped. Keira's blood ran cold at her mother's harsh words, and despair filled her eyes. The agony she kept bottled up for years finally burst forth. I'm unworthy of him, huh? But does Kim deserve him? Vincent would never have even spared her a glance if not for you lying to him. You took what was supposed to be mine and gave it to her. Don't you find yourselves shameless? Melinda's face turned red with rage when she saw that Keira dared to talk back. Meanwhile, Frank slapped Keira hard. He roared, "You ingrate. We're your parents and we gave you your life and everything you have. We have the right to take it all back when we want to, and we can give it to Kim if we want. How dare you argue with us over this? If you dare try to talk about the truth again, we'll dash." The door swung open before he could finish speaking and Vincent entered frowning. He asked, "The truth? What truth?" Frank and Melinda were startled by his sudden appearance. They started stammering as they tried to sweep things under the rug. "We were just teaching her a lesson. We wanted to know the truth of why she pushed Kim into the water." "Exactly. She refuses to admit she is wrong, and we are just mad at her for that. We don't know how to punish her though." They shared a look and changed the subject. Vincent didn't think much of their odd behavior. He turned to look at Keira, his gaze icier than ever. "Lock her in the morgue if she insists on denying she is wrong. She can be let out once she learns her lesson." Frank and Melinda found that to be a good idea. They immediately summoned bodyguards to take her away. Keira cupped her cheek, which was red and swollen from the slap. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. She knew that retaliating would only make things worse for her, so she didn't struggle in the slightest. She allowed the bodyguards to drag her away. As the eerie frostiness of the morgue enveloped her, all she could do was wrap her arms around herself as she shivered uncontrollably. Amid her daze, she was reminded of the days when she and Vincent had held each other close on stormy nights to keep each other warm at the villa in the suburbs. At the time, he would take off his jacket and wrap it around her before pulling her into his warm embrace. He would repeatedly tell her not to be scared because he was with her. The sweetness of her memories and the iciness of reality blended together, tormenting Keira's nerves. The seconds passed, and she drifted in and out of consciousness as the cold and hunger got to her. Just then the door opened. Vincent strode in, his gaze cold and sharp. "Have you learned your lesson after being locked in here for a day and night?"
"Yeah.
"I've realized my mistakes, and I now know that I was horribly wrong." Keira had to force the words out as she lay curled up on the floor. When she saw the satisfied look on his face, she staggered to her feet and left the morgue. In her heart, she told herself that the only mistake she'd made was falling for him and believing that he would keep his promise of getting together with her. Keira returned home after being discharged from the hospital and started clearing everything that had to do with Vincent. The journal she written in when she was younger, love letters, she penned photos she's secretly taken of him, gifts she wanted to give him, surprises she prepared. These were things she wanted to give him after getting together with him. She wanted to tell him the story of her secret love for him. But now she knew that there was no way they would ever be together. These things would never be put to use. Keira threw them all away. When she turned around, she ran into Vincent, who was dropping Kim off. He glanced at the trash can before looking at her, his gaze as cold as ever. Kim also saw the things and clung to his arm, smiling as she turned on the charm. "I think she really learned her lesson this time, Vincent. I'm sure she won't bother you anymore. She's my sister after all. Don't be so cold to her." Vincent looked at Keira coldly. "I have always been cold to people I don't like. I can't bring myself to be nice to them." Keira listened to them without saying anything. She merely took a deep breath and suppressed her emotions as she returned to her room. It was Kim's birthday the following day, and she had a grand birthday celebration. The guests milled about in the banquet hall and chatted among themselves. "This is a birthday celebration Mr. Slater has thrown for his fiancée. It's truly a grand affair. I heard that the flowers were imported from Europa this morning, and fireworks are going to be set off for 3 consecutive days in celebration. You see the jewelry set Ms. Kim has on now? It's worth billions of dollars." Mr. Slater went to Sotheby to bid on them himself. He's gone all out to please his beloved, hasn't he? Ms. Kim is truly fortunate to be able to marry him, and the York family status has skyrocketed. Because of this, it's too bad they have a ticking time bomb like Keira, who constantly covets Mr. Slater. She's so shameless. Tell me about it. She and Kim are sisters, yet she can't compare to Ms. Kim at all, whether in terms of appearance or personality. Yet she has the nerve to pester Mr. Slater. She's truly twisted. If I had a daughter like her, I'd want nothing more than to kick her out. Mr. and Mrs. York are truly kind to still have her around. Keira listened to them, her heart calm and unaffected. She stood in a corner, like she was invisible. She didn't want to attract anyone's attention. Nearby, Frank, Melinda, and Vincent surrounded Kim like she was a star in the sky. They helped her arrange the train of her gown, field the people who wanted to toast her, light the candles on the cake for her, and sing her a birthday song. Keira saw how happy they were and was reminded of her own birthdays. Kim had always found excuses to take Frank and Melinda away, leaving her to blow out the candles alone. During the few years she spent with Vincent, he had celebrated with her. He had been by her side as she made her birthday wishes and cut the cakes, and he had given her gifts. She had thought that she would never be alone again. Alas, she only had his care and warmth for a few years before having them taken away. While she would no longer cling to that, Kim shut her eyes and made a wish, as everyone cheered and clapped. Then the guests started presenting their gifts. She opened them to reveal expensive bags and jewelry. The smile on her face never slipped. The last two gifts were from her parents and Vincent. They caused a stir the moment the gifts were announced. Melinda and I thought long and hard about this, but we've decided to appoint Kim as the successor to York Group. She will inherit every dime of the York family fortune. My gift to Kim is 50% of Slater Group shares and a ring that has been passed down in the Slater family for generations. Grandma once told me that couples who wear these rings will be happy together until the day they die. Kim, you are the only woman I want to marry. Thank you for saying yes to me. Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger as everyone watched. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. That made everyone abuzz. They clapped and cheered while blessing the happy couple. Keira watched them from her corner, feeling depressed. She clenched her fists tightly and turned to leave, but Kim stopped her. Keira, where's your gift? When are you going to give it to me? Everyone turned to look at Keira. She stopped and pulled out the gift she had prepared from her bag, handing it to Kim. Kim opened it and was about to mock her when Vincent suddenly focused on Keira's outstretched hand. Why do you have that bracelet? Keira looked up to meet his incredulous gaze. She instinctively rubbed her bracelet. During the time Vincent lost his vision, Keira still dressed up nicely before going to see him despite knowing he could not see her. She often wore that bracelet, and he felt it every time he held her hand. He even asked her which gems were embedded in it. When Keira remained silent, Vincent grabbed her wrist urgently, saying, "Speak. Why is this bracelet with you? Who are you?" Keira never would have thought that Vincent would recognize the bracelet, but failed to recognize her. She had mixed feelings as she parted her lips to explain everything. However, Kim beat her to it. She asked, "Why did you take my bracelet without my permission, Keira?" She reached out to take the bracelet away, her sharp nails leaving bloody scratches on Keira's wrist. Keira let out a muffled grunt of pain and wanted to pull away, but Kim took the opportunity to fall backward. Vincent panicked and instinctively pulled her into his arms while glaring at Keira. He said, "So that's it. I thought. You stole Kim's bracelet and even tried to hurt her after having her lie exposed. You disgust me, Keira." Keira felt cold all over when she saw how he believed Kim's lies without even giving her the chance to explain. She held up her bleeding wrist, her tone filled with despair and anguish as she asked, "Since you remember this bracelet, haven't you noticed that Kim hasn't worn it since you regained your vision? It's because she has no idea it even existed. She doesn't know it's the one you—" Her words were abruptly cut off as Frank slapped her. Her vision went black and she fell back against the champagne tower. The glasses toppled over her, soaking her through. She fell to the floor, landing on the shattered glass. Blood spurted from her wounds, and the pain made her tears flow. Melinda stormed toward Keira and splashed her wine in her face. Kim didn't wear the bracelet because it was broken and sent for repairs. "The butler just picked it up today, and you stole it when we weren't at home so you could put it on and pretend it's yours. We can overlook you wreaking havoc at home, but it's Kim's birthday today, and you are pulling this stunt in front of so many people. You're a disgrace to our family. That bracelet is one of the pieces your grandmother treasured in life. She had left it for her precious Kim. How could it be yours?" Frank and Melinda worked together seamlessly, instantly making Vincent believe they were telling the truth. He comforted Kim, who was weeping, and wiped her tears. Then he approached Keira and lifted her bloody arm. He removed the bracelet, wiped the blood off it, and put it on for Kim. Then he looked at her like she was a precious treasure. Kim, this bracelet symbolizes your grandmother's love for you, and it carries the memories of the 5 years we spent together. I won't let anyone dirty it. He turned to Frank and Melinda, his tone turning cold as he said, I believe Keira needs to be punished for stealing and for her inappropriate behavior, Mr. York. Frank nodded and had someone bring him a whip. Then he said, per our family's tradition, Keira deserves 50 lashes for what she's done today. It's my fault for not raising her right, and I'm sorry to have ruined the celebration. I'll teach this ingrate a lesson in public and correct my wrongs. He raised the whip and lashed Keira without holding back. The whip hurtled through the air and landed on Keira's back with a loud crack, instantly drawing blood. She shuddered violently and screamed, the sound reverberating around the spacious hall. Blood flowed from her wounds and soon dyed her body red. She was in so much pain that her mind turned hazy, but she mumbled, I didn't steal anything. That bracelet has always been mine. Grandma gave it to me. Vincent didn't feel any pity for her as he watched her struggle in the pool of blood. All he did was cover Kim's eyes and take her away. Keira shut her bloodshot eyes after watching them leave. She bit her lip tightly and forced herself to remain quiet no matter how agonized she was. When the punishment was served, Frank and Melinda left without another look at her. The guests and servers also left the hall looking scornful. No one paid Keira any attention. She lay on the cold floor covered in wounds from head to toe. Even the lights were turned off, leaving her in endless darkness. She only regained some strength in the following morning. She went to the hospital alone to have her wounds tended to. The doctor was alarmed by her state, and it took 3 hours to have her wounds disinfected and bandaged. She broke out in a cold sweat and snapped a few fingers as she wrote out the pain. Then she spent 2 days at the hospital, and her wounds slowly scabbed over. During that time, Kim made sure to send her provocative messages daily. Mom and Dad have agreed to turn your room into a nursery and kids' room. Once Vincent and I have children, they'll stay in that room whenever we're home. When are you going to move your trash out? Vincent took me to pick out a wedding dress today. I thought that these few were nice, and he bought them all. My feet hurt after trying on so many shoes, and his heart ached so badly for me. He even massaged them for me. Keira was numb as she looked at the photos of Vincent looking tenderly at Kim. She didn't reply to any of the messages. When she was well enough to head home, she did so, and started packing her things. Aside from some necessities, she threw everything else out, leaving nothing behind. When the butler saw this, he approached her and said tentatively, Miss Kim means to have you move into the basement. The lighting isn't good there, but there's plenty of space. You don't have to throw these things away. Keira looked around the empty room and said calmly, it's fine. I don't need any of these things, so I might as well just throw them out. I'm leaving the country soon and won't ever return. Butler was surprised. You are not coming back after going abroad? Just then Vincent entered the house. Who's not coming back after going abroad? The butler was about to answer him when Kim emerged from her room. Why are you here so early? I'm not done with my makeup. Vincent turned away from Keira and the butler and headed straight to Kim, tapping her nose gently. That's fine. Take your time. I can wait. I can't get my brows right. You're good with your hands, so come and help me. They went to Kim's room cheerily and shut the door behind them. Keira looked away and zipped up her suitcase. Vincent and Kim were practically glued to each other for the rest of the day, being intimate and affectionate. He prepared breakfast for her and held her in his arms as he fed her. Then he watched a film with her and explained about the Easter eggs in it. He also kissed her as they stood on the balcony, letting her leave her lipstick stains on his shirt. His gaze was filled with love and tenderness as he looked at her. The maids whispered among themselves after stumbling upon them. Mr. Slater and Miss Kim are so in love. They are not married yet, but they're already acting like newlyweds. They can't bear to be apart for even a second. Kim has been spoiled while growing up, so she's a little arrogant. Once she marries Mr. Slater, she will only be even more so, judging by how much he loves her. She's so lucky. I just feel bad for Keira. It's sad enough she's always neglected, yet she had to fall for someone who's destined to be her brother-in-law. She and Kim are sisters, so why is she so unfortunate? Keira lowered her gaze when she heard them through the door. In the past, she also questioned the heavens countless times. Why had they treated her like this? But after dying once, she understood something. If she needed to fight for something, then it wasn't meant to be hers. It was the same whether in terms of family or relationship. That's why she no longer wished to have those things. All she wanted was to get away, so she wouldn't be stuck in this hell anymore. When it was dinner time, a maid informed Kim, Keira, and Vincent that Frank and Melinda had reserved a private room at a hotel. The three of them were to join them there. Keira wanted to find an excuse not to go, but Kim forced her into the back seat of Vincent's car. On the way there, Vincent made sure to always respond to everything Kim said. She said, "Vincent, let's go to Europa for our honeymoon once we're married. I want to see the aurora and a fashion show. You have to take photos of me so I can set different photos of myself as the background of your phone, tablet, and computer."
He responded, "All right."
"I'll seek out some photographers to refine my photography skills so I can capture your prettiest side. Then I'll develop your photos and hang them all over my office and study. That way I can just look up and see you whenever I miss you. Don't go back on your promise, okay? We will have plenty of photos to look through when we have kids in future. We can show them everything we did together. Speaking of which, how many children do you want? Our son will look as handsome as you, but it would be better for our daughter to look like me." They chatted happily, seemingly having forgotten Keira was in the back seat. She stared out the window at the scenery without saying a single word. She'd fallen into a deep sleep on the day of Vincent's surgery to restore his vision, and she had a dream. In it, she was the first person he saw opening his eyes, and he never laid eyes on anyone else from that day on. He was always at her side, and he frequently surprised her and brought her on dates to show her the world. He got on one knee and proposed to her, held her hand as they walked down the aisle, and held her and their children close as they took family photos. In Keira's dream, she found a man who truly loved her for who she was, and she got in a family of her own. It was too bad that everything had turned to dust the moment she woken up. She tried hard to fight back against her fate, yet she ended up dying a horrible death. The screech of brakes snapped Keira out of her reverie. She looked up at the sound to see a sports car headed right for them, seemingly having lost control. With a loud bang, their car rammed against a divider. Keira felt her body was falling apart. She was bleeding from her forehead, arms, and legs. Pain washed over her, and she felt like she had been ripped in half. She could barely breathe through the pain. The doors on either side of her had been rammed out of shape, and the trunk was on fire. She bit her lip and forced herself to remain awake as she dragged herself to the front passenger seat. Blood trickled down her body, with every movement dyeing the seats and car floor red. She crawled out of the car with difficulty and took a few steps away from it. Just then the car exploded behind her. Flames erupted, and Keira was sent flying to the ground from the impact. She froze as she looked at the blazing car, unable to imagine that she would likely have died in there if she hesitated or been knocked out. 5 minutes had passed since the accident, and since she saved herself, yet Vincent hadn't spared her a glance from beginning to end. He hadn't even thought about saving her despite ensuring that Kim was already safe. Keira smiled bitterly and in exhaustion when she saw him holding Kim and comforting her. She ran out of strength and her eyelids slid shut like they were filled with lead. Amid her half-conscious state, she heard an ambulance siren and a nurse's panicked voice. "Ms. Keira, injuries are far worse. She already passed out due to major blood loss. Mr. Slater, we suggest operating on Ms. Keira first, or she might not make it out alive." "I don't care what happens to Keira. I just want to make sure Kim is safe. She is injured too. You have to attend to her first." Keira cracked her eyes open slightly at Vincent's familiar voice and saw his panicked expression. Frank and Melinda also arrived at the hospital. They surrounded Kim and wiped their tears, save Kim first. "We raised her like a princess. How do you expect her mother and me to live if anything happens to her?" Frank cried. "That's right. We are Keira parents. We promise we won't hold the hospital accountable if anything goes wrong with her. Forget about her and focus on Kim," Melinda added. The fact they had chosen Kim over her without hesitation burned away the remnants of hope in Keira's heart. Darkness shrouded her as she was dragged into an abyss. The familiar helplessness and fear she felt before dying in her past life overwhelm her once again. Keira didn't expect to still be alive. She smelled the disinfectant and lay there dazedly for a long time before returning to her senses. A doctor checked her, sounding relieved as they said, "We had to operate on you for hours before dragging you back from death." Thank God. Keira's gaze flickered at their words. She said hoarsely, "Thank you for saving me." The doctor nodded, then looked at her hesitantly before asking, "Were your parents the ones who were here with you the other day?" She parted her lips slightly, but remained silent. The doctor didn't dare ask anything else when he saw the look on her face. They sighed and left. Keira was alone at the hospital for the next 2 days. Nobody came to check on her. Frank and Melinda only showed up at her ward on the day she was discharged. They weren't there out of concern, though. They came to give her a warning. "Kim is getting married tomorrow. Since you promised us you will leave, do it before the wedding starts." Keira nodded at their matter-of-fact tone. Their expressions softened slightly at her obedience. "Just let Kim have this, so she can be happy. We will bring you back to be reunited with us once she and Vincent have settled down and started a family. We have transferred enough money to your account, so take care of yourself when you are abroad." After that, they hurried off. Keira pulled out the ticket to end they given her earlier. She tore it to pieces. Then she grabbed her phone and booked a ticket to Azalea. She would do as they wished and give everyone what they wanted. It was just that she would leave their world forever and make sure they would never be able to find her. After leaving the hospital, Keira went to a lawyer and had them draft a parental disownment agreement. She signed it and placed it in a box along with recording of the stories Vincent had read to her when she'd been with him at the villa in the suburbs. She approached him with it countless times, but he hadn't even bothered sparing her a second of his time. He never listened to the recording either. Since she made up her mind to leave, she would do it after severing all ties and wrapping up all loose ends. It no longer mattered to her whether or not Vincent listened to the recording. It wouldn't change her decision to disappear from his and everyone else's lives. That night the downstairs buzzed with noise as everyone got ready for the wedding. Keira didn't sleep well. She woke up early and had breakfast before putting her suitcase into the trunk of a car. She was about to leave when Vincent arrived. She looked at it in his sharp suit and nodded in greeting. Then she called him her brother-in-law for the first and last time. He was taken aback at that. Then he looked at the car behind her, frowning. "You don't have to attend the wedding today. Just stay at home." Keira knew he was worried she would crash the wedding and ruin it. She shook her head and handed him the gift she prepared. "I'm not going to the wedding, nor will I disrupt your happy life. Congratulations on your marriage and farewell." With that, she got into the car and shut the door. The plane slowly took off. Keira, who was sitting by the window, looked a little lost. She watched as those once familiar buildings gradually faded into the distance. Yet not a trace of nostalgia lingered in her heart. Instead, she felt a sense of relief. At long last, she was leaving the place she once called home. Even from a young age, Keira had dreamed of leaving because she had realized how biased her parents were toward Kim and against her. In every aspect of their life together, as well as their daily interactions, Frank and Melinda had always treated her like an outsider. At times, she even wondered if she might not be their biological daughter, and perhaps that was why they treated her so differently, but the truth was not what she had hoped. She was in fact born to them. She was also indisputably Kim's younger sister. Knowing the truth dealt her an even harsher blow. If that was the case, then the only explanation left was that they simply didn't love her. It was the complete absence of love that led to their different treatment. Even her very birth had merely been for the sake of saving Kim. Sometimes Keira would think that if Kim hadn't needed her umbilical cord blood to survive, perhaps she wouldn't have been brought into this world at all. As for Vincent, she had once believed that he was her salvation. He had treated her better than anyone else ever had, and he was the only one who made her feel genuine warmth. Although she had already developed a secret crush on him before his accident, what truly moved her wasn't his status or background. It was the absolute sincerity he showed her. That was why she had fallen for him without hesitation, but now he was utterly convinced that the person who had been by his side all along was Kim. No matter how Keira tried to explain, and no matter how many times she tried to prove herself, Vincent simply didn't believe her. The plane passed through a zone of turbulence, jolting and shaking all around. Keira could still feel a faint sense of pain in her body that was caused by the injuries from the car accident. She couldn't help but draw in a sharp breath. Her wounds had more or less healed, but for some reason, ever since she had been pushed into the water by Kim, she had become especially sensitive to the cold. Even on overcast days without rain, she felt unusually chilly. Instinctively, she pulled the blanket around her more tightly. Unfortunately, its warming effect was minimal to none. A chill still seeped into her from every direction. Just as she was considering whether to ask the flight attendant for another blanket, the man beside her suddenly handed her his own. Keira was stunned for a moment, surprised at his gesture. "I don't need it. You can keep it." The man's voice was gentle and pleasant. The immaculate white shirt he wore made him look a bit stern. He wore a face mask, so it was difficult to catch a glimpse of his face. The only feature visible was his eyes, strikingly beautiful and so piercing they seemed to look straight into your soul. "Thank you." Keira accepted the blanket with gratitude and wrapped herself tightly in it. She felt much better almost instantly, so much so that she began to feel drowsy from being sleep-deprived. Ladies and gentlemen, our flight is expected to arrive at Zedny International Airport in about 40 minutes. The current temperature in degrees Celsius or 71.6 degrees Fahrenheit. The pilot's clear voice came through the broadcast. Only then did Keira slowly stir. To her surprise, she had slept for nearly 2 hours. Her waist and legs were slightly sore from not moving during that time. Half an hour later, with her suitcase in hand, Keira glanced at the time on her phone screen. She noticed that she had arrived slightly earlier than scheduled. She glanced at her empty message screen, long accustomed to seeing it without a single notification. Even if she were to go missing one day, probably no one would care whether she was alive or dead. Now that she was in a new place, nothing from the past mattered anymore. She would let go of everything. Keira looked at the unfamiliar buildings and the people in various skin tones around her. She took in the friendly glances cast her way and felt a sense of novelty. This place was nothing like the streets where she had grown up, but she didn't feel afraid at all. On the contrary, she was full of anticipation for her new life that lay ahead. Pushing her luggage aside, Keira checked ride would be more convenient. The location the landlord had sent her. Her apartment wasn't too far away, but with her luggage in tow it's better to take taxi. So Keira opened the ride-hailing app and ordered the nearest express ride. The price was a bit steep, but she was willing to pay to get to her new place quicker because she felt drained. All she wanted was to get some rest as soon as possible. The driver arrived quickly. Less than 5 minutes later, he pulled up beside her. He had harsh features and a brightly colored sleeve tattoo all over his right arm. Without saying a single word, he got out of the car and took her suitcase. Sensing Keira unease, the driver turned back a little to make small talk. He asked if she was Korean, to which Keira shook her head and answered that she was Chinese. The moment he heard that, his expression noticeably softened. "Oh, you are Chinese?
We're from the same country then."
"Where are you from?" "I'm from the Northeast region." Perhaps he had lived abroad for too long, but his accent had a strange lilt even when speaking in their native language. Still, Keira instantly felt at ease. It was like meeting a familiar face in a foreign land. "I'm from Santon," she replied, smiling. Once they got a conversation started, the two chatted freely. Keira learned that the driver had come to this city for his girlfriend. He used to own a tattoo shop back in his hometown. With high taxes and the steep cost of starting a business, he began driving for a ride-hailing service to save money, hoping to reopen his shop someday. While waiting at a red light, he even opened a lap in his wallet to show Keira a photo of him with his girlfriend. It was a close-up shot of them smiling brightly cheek to cheek. The moment the driver talked about his girlfriend, his eyes lit up. Then he asked, "What about you? Why did you come here?" When asked about the reason for her being here, Keira hesitated. She couldn't exactly say that she was escaping her dysfunctional family. That wasn't something one would easily admit to a stranger. "I'm here for work. I landed a solid job offer," Keira answered after thinking it over. "Well, that makes sense. If the job here is better, it's a good move," the driver commented, affirming her choice. Keira nodded and didn't say anything more. Throughout the journey, the driver was very chatty. He began introducing her to local customs and some must-try restaurants. Keira took mental notes of them all. After a while they arrived at the apartment. In addition to the fare paid through the app, Keira took out some freshly exchanged bills to give to the driver. However, he simply said, there's no need for that. Come on, we're both Chinese. I'm always glad to see a fellow countryman. After placing down her luggage, the driver drove off in a relaxed, carefree manner. Keira felt warmed by his friendliness. She followed the address to her apartment building. Her landlady, a middle-aged woman with blonde and curly hair, was already waiting in the lobby. After handing over the keys to Keira and telling her the rules about her stay there, she left. By the time Keira registered what had happened, the landlady was already gone. As she walked through the corridor, she caught a glimpse of a figure at the corner, but before she could get a good look, the figure was gone. Keira shook her head, thinking she must be seeing things as she was tired. Her apartment wasn't large, but it was fully furnished. There was even a small balcony next to the bedroom where sunlight streamed in, casting a warm glow. Most importantly, there was a small wet kitchen. She was very satisfied with her new lodgings. She wasn't exactly fond of foreign cuisine, especially dishes that were heavy on the cheese, which she particularly disliked, so having her own was ideal because she could cook. Since Frank and Melinda had never paid much attention to her, she had learned to cook for herself most of the time. So having a kitchen to do so now made her genuinely happy. Keira cleaned her room, then she opened her suitcase and took out all her clothes to put them into the closet. Next, she unpacked her fragile items one by one and arranged them carefully. When her room was finally set up to her liking, Keira felt a sense of satisfaction. After a long day, she washed up and went to bed. That nap on the plane had been far from restful, so when she woke up again, it was already 2 p.m. As Keira glanced around her new room, it still felt unfamiliar. It took a moment for the reality to sink in. She had truly arrived in Ozalia. It was February, so it was summer in Zedney right now. Keira put on a light, breezy summer dress and stepped out. This was unlike the polished, careful outfits she used to wear back in China.
She just wanted to enjoy the sunshine outside that day.
She planned to eat at a restaurant first, then pick up some groceries on the way home. Her nose picked up the scent of something delicious that aroused her appetite. She instinctively followed the aroma to a restaurant. She found that the eatery specialized in steak, so she ordered their signature dish. However, she asked them to remove the cheesy potato wedges. When the steak was served, Keira eagerly took a bite and found the meat tender and flavorful. It was absolutely scrumptious. She was very satisfied. Just as she was about to settle her bill, she suddenly realized she had left both her cash and her card in the pocket of another outfit. She had completely forgotten about it when changing into the dress. Keira was caught in an awkward moment, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, a hand reached out with a card, followed by a voice offering to pay for both meals. Startled, Keira's eyes traveled from the outstretched hand to the person's face. It was the man from the airport that morning. It was only now she got a clear look at his face. His bone structure was striking, with a well-defined brow ridge and nose bridge that balanced each other perfectly. Altogether, he carried an air of quiet aloofness. Keira thanked him profusely and asked, "How can I pay you back?" "It's okay. I've got a cash card," he replied, lifting the golden card in his hand as he spoke. His fluent Chinese caught Keira by surprise. Based on his features, he didn't exactly look like someone who would speak the language. However, the meal wasn't cheap, so she was determined to pay him back. "That won't do. I must repay you," Keira blurted instinctively. The man turned to look at her and said, "Then treat me to ice cream next time. I like the one from that shop right below the apartment building." Keira froze for a moment. That was when she realized the figure she seen by the stairs earlier had indeed been him, so she hadn't been mistaken after all. "Okay, I'll treat you to ice cream next time," Keira agreed. After he walked away, Keira realized she forgot to ask for his name. She felt a little miffed at how scatterbrained she was after letting a stranger pay for her meal, an expensive one, no less. Soon, Keira was back at her apartment. After retrieving her cash, she went out again to buy groceries and stocked her fridge. A fridge full of cooking ingredients instantly gave her a sense of security. Suddenly, her phone changed. Upon checking, she saw that it was an email from Kim with a few photos attached. In the photos, she was wearing a wide mermaid-style gown and smiling sweetly at the camera. Behind her stood Vincent, who was looking at her with deep affection. The two of them looked every bit the happy couple about to be married. The remaining photos showed a diamond ring and a family portrait featuring them with Frank and Melinda. Keira's grip on the phone tightened slightly. She knew exactly what Kim's intention was. The latter just wanted to show her that Vincent's heart now belonged entirely to someone else. Beneath the photos were several paragraphs of taunting text. "This is the wedding dress I finally close. Isn't it beautiful? I liked another one better, but Vincent insisted this one highlighted my figure more, so he bought them both. It was the same for the diamond ring too. I told him it didn't have to be this big since I won't wear it much, but he insisted. We were going to invite you to the wedding, but Vincent didn't want you there. He said he didn't want to see you on such a joyful day. Mom and Dad also said your presence would jinx our wedding, so we all agreed not to invite you. Now that we're about to get married, it's time for you to let go. Whatever you and Vincent had in the past is no concern of mine, but from this day on you had better remember the one who gets to be by his side is me. Vincent is your brother-in-law and nothing else." As Keira read the words, she could almost hear Kim's tone and picture the expression on her face. She didn't reply to the message. She simply closed the email in silence. At that moment she remembered how Vincent had once gently described her features, saying her eyes must be beautiful. She asked what would happen if he didn't think she was pretty when he finally saw her. Vincent replied no matter how she looked, she would always be the most beautiful in his eyes. Vincent's words had been so passionate and straightforward. Keira had blushed after hearing them back, then imagining a future with him. Naively, she had even pictured them marrying and building a happy family. Although she had long let go of Vincent, seeing those pictures still caused a slight ache in her heart, but she knew there was no point in dwelling on what was past. She would no longer hold on to any expectations. Just as the wedding was about to begin, a young boy holding a cup of grape juice suddenly ran into the hall and bumped straight into Kim. The deep purple grape juice instantly stained her pristine white dress. Kim cried, "My dress! Whose brat is this?
Who let him in?
Take him out right now." Hearing the commotion, Vincent quickly came over. The moment he noticed the impatience on Kim's face, he was so stunned he froze in place. In his mind, she had always been the gentle and quiet type. Even when faced with trouble, she never lost her composure, so seeing her like this now caught him off guard. "Vincent? When did you get here? I didn't even see you," she said sweetly. When Vincent looked at her pain, he saw the same gentle expression on her face. It was completely different from the one she had shown just moments. "I heard you cry out, so I came to check." "Are you all right?" Vincent asked. "I'm fine, it's just that I've got grape juice all over me. Now I'll change into another dress. Wait here for me, okay?" Kim replied demurely, "Okay." Vincent nodded, however he couldn't shake his strange unfamiliarity when looking at Kim. It wasn't a fleeting feeling that came and went. It felt as if something about her now didn't quite match the person he used to know. Sometimes when he least expected it, the face that flashed in his mind wasn't Kim. It was Keira. A trace of doubt stirred in his heart, but he couldn't voice it. After all, Kim was his wife, and he was Keira's brother-in-law, huh? Vincent repeated in his mind. Suddenly, he remembered how Keira had called him that just before she got into the car. Her face had been pale as she handed over the wedding gift she had prepared before quietly leaving. He hadn't even had time to respond to her. Upon remembering the box, Vincent decided to take a look at it. He took the elevator to the parking lot and began searching through the car. When he couldn't find it, he called for his assistant Danny to come over. "Where the box I handed to you this morning?" Vincent asked. "You mean the box Miss Kim's younger sister gave you?" Danny asked hesitantly, sensing the shift in his tone. Vincent frowned in frustration. "What's this? You couldn't even hold on to something I handed you. Miss Kim said the gift wasn't anything valuable and told me to just throw it away." Danny answered timidly. "What?" Vincent's voice rose, hinting at his irritation. "Do you remember where you threw it? Go find it now." Danny immediately ran off. Watching Danny retreating back, Vincent felt a strange sense of unease creeping in. 10 minutes later, Danny rushed backstage holding the box. Just as he was about to hand it, Kim came over. He discreetly stepped aside with it. "Vincent, why are you here?" "I couldn't find you after I changed." "What do you think of this dress?" Kim asked expectantly. The long purple mermaid gown with a train sparkled under the lights. But Vincent's expression dimmed. He remembered very clearly Kiki had once said she didn't like the color purple. So, why would she choose it as her wedding dress now? The doubts in his mind piled up, and his thoughts spiraled into chaos. You look beautiful. The color suits you, Vincent said, smiling, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Kim didn't notice something was off with Vincent. She was busy admiring herself in the mirror, dressed in her expensive gown. Soft music began to play. The classic wedding opening speech started. Introduction of the bride and groom began. Kim's face glowed with joy. In contrast, Vincent's expression remained stiff. He held Kim's hand and slowly walked onto the stage, but then the face that appeared in his mind wasn't Kim but Keira. Kim called out to him several times, but he didn't respond at all. She was both anxious and furious. The guests below began to whisper among themselves. Kim hastily nudged Vincent in the arm. Only then did he snap out of it. The MC quickly added perhaps the groom was simply exhausted from the wedding preparations and asked everyone for their understanding. Vincent and Kim then distractedly exchanged rings. Soon it was time for the toast. I'm not feeling very well. I'll make the toast later, Vincent said without waiting for a reply. Vincent turned and walked away without caring about her feelings or what she thought. She wanted to chase after him and ask what was wrong, but the guests were all waiting, left with no choice. Kim stayed behind to appease them. Vincent drove all night yesterday, so he's a bit tired. He'll greet everyone later, she explained. With that, she picked up a glass of wine and toasted to the room. Although some guests were clearly puzzled, no one said anything at that moment. After all, it wasn't their wedding. When Vincent returned backstage, Danny immediately handed him the box. He opened the clasp on the box and saw a small cassette tape and a parental disownment agreement. He froze for a moment upon taking in the bold letters of the document titled, "Did Keira have such a bad relationship with the Yorks? Why would she voluntarily cut ties with them?" Judging from how caring Frank and Melinda always were toward Kim, he couldn't make sense of it. As Vincent's fingers brushed over the tape, he felt it looked oddly familiar. He vaguely remembered Keira had once brought this to him, asking him to listen to it, but at the time he had thought she was just making a fuss and had no interest in whatever it contained. Now she had given it to him again. He suddenly felt a strong urge to hear its contents. He found a computer and inserted the tape. After a burst of static, a male voice began telling a story. The voice was clear and mellow. It struck something deep inside him. Right away, the one speaking on the tape was none other than himself. It was the recording he had made when he was blind to tell Kiki stories. He wondered why Keira had it. Could it be that the one who had been by his side all along was Keira and not Kim? Or had Keira stolen it from her again? Vincent immediately pulled out his phone to call Keira and ask for answers, but no matter how many times he tried, the call wouldn't go through, so he grabbed the tape and stormed off to find Kim. He figured that she must know about this tape if she had been so adamant that she was the one who stayed by his side. He pulled her aside as she was making her rounds at the reception and asked urgently, "Kim, was it really you who stayed by my side all that time?" His grip was so firm that Kim couldn't break free. "What's going on with you? Why are you suddenly asking me that? Of course, I was the one who stayed with you. Who else would love you as much as I do? You have been distracted all day." "What's wrong with you?" she responded irritably. "Then repeat the story I told you before." Vincent's voice dropped low. "Of course I remember, but it's been so long, I can't quite recall the details." Kim deliberately avoided meeting his eyes. Her guilt and panic were as plain as day. At that moment, even if Vincent hadn't figured everything out yet, he was sure about one thing. Kim was not Kiki. The one he had been searching for all along was Keira. Vincent stared at Kim coldly, without saying another word. It was only then that she realized she had probably said the wrong thing. She tried to smooth it over by saying, "I didn't mean to forget the story you told me. I've just been so busy with the wedding preparations that my mind's a mess. Don't be mad, okay? After we're married, you can tell me the stories again." "Oh." She lightly tugged on the sleeve of his jacket playfully. But Vincent only felt repulsed by the face that was close to his. "Even now you are still lying to me? You are not Kiki," Vincent exclaimed and shoved her hard. Caught completely off guard, Kim fell down the steps on the stage and rolled all the way to the front of the curtain. Her wedding dress was torn apart, and her body was scraped in multiple places. In an instant, a flurry of camera flashes went off across the room. Kim didn't even have time to care about the pain she was feeling. She panicked and covered her face, too afraid to move. She wanted to go after Vincent and explain, but he didn't give her a chance. He strode to the front of the stage and spoke into the microphone. Everyone, the wedding is cancelled. Kim is not the bride I was looking for. With that, he walked out of the banquet hall without looking back. Just as Vincent left, he ran into Frank and Melinda. What's wrong, Vincent? Where are you going? Isn't it time for the toast? He looked at their clueless faces and tossed the box at their feet. The thought of being deceived by them and Kim made his blood boil. I'm not getting married to Kim, and you know very well why. I won't forget what the York family has done. Vincent said through gritted teeth. His words sent shockwaves through both Frank and Melinda. They exchanged alarmed glances and picked up the box before rushing toward the banquet hall. The guests who had witnessed the drama unfold started gossiping among themselves. What just happened? Didn't they already exchange vows? But, Mr. Slater said the wedding cancelled. Is he seriously backing out now? Didn't you hear? Mr. Slater was sent away for a while when he was blind. Rumor has it that he met a young woman back then and spent a lot of time looking for her. Judging by what just happened, someone must have tried to pass themselves off as that woman but got exposed to be a fake. Otherwise, why cancel the wedding on the spot? How scandalous. So that's what this was about.
Serves her right.
How dare she pretend to be someone she's not? Look, she got dumped in public. The York family should be ashamed. How did they raise such a daughter? Although the voices weren't loud, Kim clearly heard every word from beginning to end. She dug her fingertips deep into her palms, not letting go until she drew blood. Frank and Melinda rushed in, blocking the cameras and helping Kim to the back in a panic. Kim, did you slip up? How did Vincent find out at this exact moment? Melinda asked sternly. I didn't say anything. It has to be Keira. She must have done something to make him realize. She just can't stand seeing me happy. She's the one who caused me to be humiliated now. Mom, Dad, you have to punish her. Kim cried, her voice cracking with emotion. Melinda's heart hurt at the sight of her precious daughter in such distress. Okay. I'll teach Keira a good lesson. How could she treat you like this? Frank chimed in. Exactly. We've always loved you the most. Don't worry. We'll make sure this gets sorted out. That's more like it, but what about Vincent? He must have already figured out that I'm not the one. Kim said, a flash of resentment crossing her. It's all right. We'll talk to Vincent. If it's necessary, we'll go directly to the Slater family. We have our own reputation to uphold. The wedding must take place, Melinda reassured her. I knew it. I knew you loved me the most. Kim whispered softly, while leaning into Melinda's arms. Suddenly, she noticed what was in Frank's hand. She thought that it looked very familiar. In fact, it looked just like the wedding gift Keira had given. But she distinctly remembered ordering Danny to throw it away as soon as they got out of the car. Why was it here now? What's that? Kim asked before casually opening the box. Inside was a sheet of paper. On it were bolded words that read, Parental Dissonant Agreement. Keira walked to the window and pushed it open with one swift motion. The weather outside was beautiful, and it instantly brightened up her mood. She decided to head out for a walk. At the moment, she hadn't gone to any interview yet, and still had some free time to spare. As she arrived downstairs by the bushes, she suddenly heard faint meowing sounds. She turned her head, but saw no sign of a kitten. Thinking she might have misheard, she turned to leave. But then she heard the sound again. She crouched and examined the bushes carefully. After some time, she spotted an orange kitten deep inside an old drainage pipe. It was painfully thin with wounds all over its body. Yet when it saw Keira approach, it didn't seem scared at all. Instead, it began clumsily crawling toward her with all its strength. There were several large cement blocks, which she tried to move. Keira's heart ached at the sight. She made up her mind to save it, but she tried multiple times without success. She thought about asking someone for help but didn't know anyone around here except for the man who had helped pay her bill before. After hesitating for a while, she decided to take a chance. She went to where she thought he stayed and knocked on his door. The man appeared, and it was evident that he'd just woken up. When he saw it was her, he quickly straightened his clothes and asked, "Do you need something?" Keira quickly explained the situation with the kitten she had come across downstairs. The man then replied, "All right. Wait here a second." He went back inside his apartment to get changed. Then the two of them headed down together. After spotting where the kitten was, he carefully moved the cement blocks aside and gently lifted the kitten from the pipe. The kitten meowed nonstop. It seemed to somehow understand that it was being rescued because it didn't struggle. It simply curled up obediently in the man's arms. It looks like its leg might be injured. We should take it to a vet, said Keira worriedly.
Okay.
There's a vet right around the corner, the man replied. After walking for a few minutes, they arrived at the veterinary clinic. A nurse came over to ask about the situation and informed them that they needed to run a check first. Not long after, the nurse brought the kitten back out and said its leg injury wasn't serious. There were some scrapes, and it would make a full recovery with some care. Nevertheless, it was severely malnourished and would need to stay for observation for a few days. Looking at the kitten in her arms, Keira sighed in relief and expressed her sincere gratitude. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I really wouldn't have known who to turn to. Oh, I haven't even asked your name. No problem. I'm glad we could save the little guy. My name's Stellan Lundgren, and you are? Keira York. Stellan repeated her name under his breath and gave a slight nod after getting the kitten settled, and the two of them walked back to the apartment building together, perhaps because they now had something in common to care for. The conversation flowed easily between them. Keira soon learned Stellan was working as a legal consultant here. Coincidentally, she had always been interested in law since she was young. So the two began chatting in depth about the profession. The longer they talked, the more at ease they felt in each other's presence. It was like they had known each other for a long time. Keira's impression of Stellan changed too. She found that he wasn't as cold as he appeared to be. Walt here for a moment. All right, Stellan was a bit puzzled, but still agreed instinctively. After a few minutes, Keira came running back holding 2 huge ice cream cones. Only then did Stellan realize her intention. He remarked appreciatively, "You remembered." Of course. Keira handed him one of the cones. Stellan didn't spoil the moment and accepted it with a smile. Sunlight filtered through the gaps between the leaves overhead, and as he looked at Keira, he couldn't help but feel a warm flush on his cheeks. Upon realizing this, he quickly made an excuse to head home. Yet Keira didn't notice this. They simply agreed to visit the vet again next time and parted ways. In the days that followed, Keira and Stellan often went to the vet together. Under the nurse's care, the kitten's condition improved significantly. Keira had initially planned to take it home, but the landlord had made it clear that no pets were allowed in the apartment. That was one of the rules she bade to follow. The kitten can stay with me. My place is bigger, and I've had cats before, Stellan offered. As his words fell, he pulled out his phone and showed her his phone photo gallery. His wallpaper was a picture of a beautiful little kit with big round eyes. It was utterly adorable. All right, but I'll buy the cat food and supplies. You have already paid for the vet bills, so let me handle this part, Keira said, looking down at the kitten in her arms. Okay, but you won't be able to carry everything by yourself. I'll go with you, Stellan suggested. Keira hadn't expected him to be so thoughtful. She agreed with utmost gratitude. Two of them went on a small shopping spree to pick out cat supplies and toys. Although Keira struggled deciding which things to buy, Stellan wasn't the least bit impatient with her. Instead, he gave her constructive and helpful suggestions. Keira felt a surge of warmth in her heart. She had never experienced someone being so patient with her before. She was suddenly reminded that Vincent had once been like that too. But in the end, he wasn't even willing to spare some time to listen to a cassette. What's wrong? Stellan asked immediately upon noticing the change in her expression. Nothing. I just realized we haven't given the kitten a name yet, Keira responded. Then you should name it. You found it after all, Stellan said, smiling. Keira thought about it for a moment. What about Summer? Since we found it in the summer. What do you think? She asked while looking at Stellan expectantly. I think it's really cute. All right then, it'll be Summer from now on, Stellan agreed. Since it was already late by the time they returned from the vet, Stellan hailed a ride. He even called ahead to confirm with the driver if he was okay with then bringing a cat along. The driver readily agreed, without any issue. When the driver arrived, he gave Keira a strange look and said something in a foreign language to Stellan. Keira didn't understand, so she leaned in and asked, "Why did he look at me like that just now?" "What did he say?" "He said that your kitten is so cute he wants to steal it." Stellan was seriously. Really? Why would he do that? Keira immediately hugged the kitten protectively. Her reaction made Stellan laugh. I was just kidding. Keira didn't say anything but hugged the kitten even tighter. She was unaware that Stellan was smiling brightly as her face was turned to the other side. After reluctantly placing the kitten in Stellan's apartment, Keira rushed back home to take a shower. Just as she came out of the bathroom, her phone buzzed. Keira was puzzled as to who would be messaging her this late. She glanced at her phone screen and saw that it was a news push notification. The headline read, Vincent Slater cancels wedding publicly. It was followed by a short line stating that Vincent had dumped his bride at the wedding venue and announced that she wasn't the one he had been looking for. The photo captured the chaotic moment at the banquet hall, but what caught Keira's eye were the sunflowers everywhere. There was a hand-drawn sunflower on the poster. Each of the wedding favors on the guest tables had cartoon sunflowers printed on them too. This was all because Kiki had once said that she loved sunflowers. She had even said her dream wedding was a sunflower-themed one. Evidently, Vincent remembered all those details. As they scrolled down the news article, Keira felt a pang in her heart. She figured that he must have finally listened to the recording. But even so, she would no longer place any hope in him. Everything he had done to her before still lingered in her mind. At this point, anything he did to make up for it was too little too late. Keira closed the page and silently unfollowed the news account. She was done with Vincent and anything related to their shared past. Frank, Melinda, and Kim were stunned as they stared at the legally binding document. Kim scoffed in disdain. What kind of tantrum is Keira throwing now? So, what if she wasn't invited to the wedding? Did she really have to send this to Vincent on purpose? She's just trying to make him think we treated her badly. She did this on purpose. If she heard that the wedding was called off, she'd probably be thrilled right now. Frank and Melinda thought what Kim said made sense. Their resentment toward Keira surged instantly. Frank decided to call Keira and give her a scolding for being a brat, but all he heard was the cold mechanical tone of the pre-recorded female voice saying the number couldn't be reached. Beyond that, he got nothing. So Frank grew furious. She won't even pick up my call now. How insolent. Melinda found it hard to believe. So she tried calling Keira herself. She discovered that, as Frank had said, Keira's number was indeed unreachable. She really wants to cut ties with us for good. Since she's caused me this much humiliation, why don't we just kick her out of our family altogether? Kim suggested coldly, believing that she should take advantage of the situation. Frank and Melinda instantly agreed, and even started discussing getting a lawyer to notarize the document. Only then did Kim let out a sigh of relief. When the three returned home, the sight of the wedding decorations that were put up instantly reignited Kim's anger. She tore down every single one of them, like a madwoman. She didn't even touch her dinner before locking herself in her room. Frank and Melinda stood outside her room, their hearts aching with worry. They took turns trying to persuade her to eat. Kim, you have been through so much today. You can't slap dinner, sweetheart. That's right. No matter what has happened, at least come out and eat something. After a long silence, Kim's voice finally came from inside the room. I don't care. I want to marry Vincent. The wedding has already taken place. If I don't marry him, I'll become a laughingstock. Didn't you say you had a way? Go figure it out for me right now. Left with no other choice, Frank and Melinda drove straight to the Slater residence. Before their car even pulled to a stop, several men in black suits came forward and blocked their way. This is private property. You can't just barge in. The one who looked like the leader tapped his stun baton against the car window in warning. Frank mustered his courage and stepped out of his car. We're not some random nobodies. We're Mr. Slater's future in-laws. I suggest you inform him that we're here to see him. If Vincent finds out you turned us away, things won't go well for you. He thought that the man would be intimidated by his remarks, but to his surprise, the man chuckled coldly and looked them over with a smirk. In-laws? Mr. Slater isn't married. So how could he have in-laws? They're probably imposters.
Get lost.
Or else I'll have to use some force. As he spoke, he waved the stun baton in the air. Melinda wanted to retort, but she was so frightened that she fell silent immediately. Unwilling to back down, Frank shouted toward the villa, Vincent, there's a reason behind what happened with Kim. You have to let us explain. And, besides, the whole city knows about the wedding now. If you cancel it, your family's reputation will take a hit too. The guard moved in to stop him from making a ruckus, but just then a man who looked like a butler rushed over and whispered a few words to him. The guard immediately let go of Frank and said disdainfully, "You got lucky. Mr. Slater says he'll see you." "Me?" Frank pointed to himself. "Yes, but she stays here and isn't allowed to wander off," the guard replied. Melinda didn't dare protest. Frank, on the other hand, followed the butler anxiously into the villa. Standing in front of the tall floor-to-ceiling window, Vincent held a freshly lit cigarette between his fingers. Ever since realizing that Keira was the one he had truly been looking for, he had immediately launched a city-wide search. Yet there was still no trace of her. Even all his attempts to contact her had failed. Every communication channel he tried showed that her account had been deactivated. His heart was filled with guilt and anxiety. He felt guilty for not realizing that she was the one after all this time. At the same time, he was filled with anxiety over all the unforgivable things he had done, and now he didn't even have the chance to explain. At this moment, only one thought consumed him. He had to find Keira, no matter the cost. When he heard a knock on the door, he snuffed out the cigarette immediately. "I heard you were planning to report this to the Slater family. Is that your way of threatening me?" Vincent's voice was frigid. The temperature in the room seemed to drop drastically. Frank felt a chill run down his spine immediately upon stepping in. "No, that's not it. That wasn't what I meant," he stammered. "I just didn't want to see such a good marriage fall apart over nothing." The arrogance he had once displayed vanished entirely when he was before Vincent. His tone was now full of nothing but flattery. "A good marriage? Do you really take me for a fool?" Vincent let out a cold laugh. The deadpan stare he directed at Frank was so crushing that the latter couldn't even lift his head. But as he thought of Kim, who was refusing to eat at home, he forced himself to speak. "My wife and I think highly of you. How could we possibly deceive you? Look, you and Kim got along well. Whether or not she was the one who cared for you shouldn't really matter, should it? Why don't we just accept the mistake that was made and make do with it?" Frank's shameless proposition left Vincent momentarily speechless. He growled, "So, you are admitting the one who took care of me wasn't Kim but Keira. Is that correct? If you don't tell me the truth, I'll throw you out that window myself." Without warning, he shot forward and grabbed Frank by the collar. Frank collapsed to the floor in terror after glancing out the window. He confessed in a panic it was Keira, not Kim. "At first we didn't know either. Kim told us you were looking for someone who looked a lot like Keira, so we had Kim take her place. That bracelet. It originally belonged to Keira." Vincent lowered his gaze and frustratedly said, "You claim to think highly of me. Is that why you think any daughter of yours would do? Why did you deceive me? Kim is the daughter we worked so hard to have. Keira was only burned to save her. Of course they're not the same." Frank said without hesitation. In his mind, only Kim was his real daughter. He couldn't have cared less about Keira. As Kim's father, he thought he should give her whatever she wanted. After hearing him draw such a harsh distinction between his two daughters, Vincent finally understood why Keira had chosen to sever ties with them. At that moment, his heart ached for Keira even more. "Where is Keira now? Did you hide her away somewhere?" Vincent's voice grew urgent. She went to Ender," Frank answered. Vincent quickly asked, "Do you have her address?" Frank shook his head. Vincent stared at him for a moment. Even now he seemed completely unrepentant about what he had done to Keira. With a snap of his fingers, Vincent ordered his bodyguards to detain Frank. He then instructed them to have Melinda thrown into the basement with him too.
Frank was shocked to hear that.
He exclaimed, "I've already told you everything. How can you do this? Have you ever heard of something called karma? You'll get it." His shouting soon faded into silence in no time. The only sound left in the room was the steady ticking of the clock. Vincent walked back to the window and tried lighting another cigarette, but no matter how many times he flicked the lighter, the flame went out. In frustration, he hurled the ashtray to the ground. Glass shards shattered across the floor. Die piece sliced across his forearm and drew blood. The sting was sharp and vivid. Yet he felt nothing. Absent-mindedly, Vincent murmurs, "Keira, where are you? I know everything now. I need to see you once more. Please." "Mr. Slater, Here are the results of what you asked me to investigate, Danny said as he placed a document big on the desk. Vincent opened it and saw the hospital billing record from back then. It clearly stated that when Kim was 3, she had suffered from a sudden critical illness that required umbilical cord blood to save her. Keira's birth had been for one purpose only, and that was to save Kim. Vincent gripped on the document, brightened slightly. He had always been puzzled by the York blatant favoritism, but he hadn't expected this to be the reason. There was also an old, slightly damaged phone inside the folder. Vincent recognized it immediately as the phone that Keira had once used. Danny had traced the final location of the phone SIM card through its call logs. After he retrieved it, he handed over the device to the tech team to restore the data. Now it had finally made its way to Vincent. He stared at the 4-digit lock screen code and hesitated for a moment. Trying his luck, he entered the number 0616. Following a soft chime, the phone unlocked. His eyes instantly reddened because June 16th was his birthday. Keira had already logged out of all the existing app accounts. Only a few undelete photos and messages remained. Vincent opened the photo album and scrolled through the images one by one. There were flowers by the roadside, various cloud formations. But most of the photos were of him. They showed him from their school days to the time after his accident and temporary blindness. Keira carefully preserved every single one of them. There was even their class photo from when they were in high school. Bitterness welled up in Vincent's heart. During all those silent, unseen moments, Keira had been quietly loving him with everything. Even when the Slater family had abandoned him, she had stayed by his side resolutely. He couldn't forget the nights they had spent together. Nor could he forget the sincerity she had shown him. Keira's love had always been like that, silent, steady, and deep. It was like a serene, undisturbed lake that rarely rippled but held clear waters where one could look into the very depths. Next, Vincent looked through messages. He was surprised to find that the person who had sent the most texts to Keira was none other than Kim. He scrolled down and saw that Kim had sent photos of wedding dresses as well as snapshots of the intimate moments they shared. The more he scrolled, the heavier his heart became. Below the photos were several messages. Keira, I heard you want to find Vincent again. Do you have no shame? He's your brother-in-law now. What are you trying to do by seducing him? Don't you understand yet? The only one who can be with Vincent is me. Even Mom and Dad have agreed to help me. Stop being delusional. You were born to be an accessory to me. If I hadn't gotten sick, you wouldn't even exist. You better face reality. You have to let me have whatever I want, and that includes Vincent. If you don't, then you are no longer a part of the York family. Reading those texts made Vincent blood boil. The entire act of Kim posing as Kiki to gain his love was far filthier than he had ever imagined. Everything had turned out this way because of Kim's incredible selfishness, which was further exacerbated by Frank and Melinda's blind indulgence. They were the ones who caused him to miss out on reuniting with Keira time and time again. Now that he had finally unraveled the full picture, everything became much simpler to handle. Frank and Melinda had already come to him themselves. There was no way he would let Kim, the key figure in all this, walk away untouched. So, he ordered Danny to bring Kim in at once. Meanwhile, Kim, who had been cooped up and moping in her room, instantly lit up with joy when she heard that Vincent wanted to see her. She thought that her parents' persuasion had worked. Overjoyed, she changed into a fresh outfit and carefully did her makeup. She took her own sweet time to doll up before leisurely stepping outside. Hey, drive slowly. Don't ruin the makeup I took so much care to put on, she said irritably as she checked her reflection in the mirror. She had always been this condescending and haughty. The only time she would be on her best behavior was when she was with Vincent. Danny didn't bother arguing or refuting them, merely cast her a long, quiet glance, like he was looking at someone who was about to meet their doom. Because more than anyone, he knew exactly what kind of person Vincent was. It was highly foreseeable that a grim fate awaited Kim for what she had done. Kim was puzzled when the car arrived at the Slater residence. She wondered why there wasn't anyone coming to open the car door for her that day. Helplessly, she freed the hand that was clutching her purse and pushed the car door open herself. Suddenly, a forceful grip yanked her out of the car. Then a thick black cloth was immediately tied around her eyes to obscure her vision. A wave of terror surged in her chest. Kim instinctively screamed at the top of her lungs. Who are you? Let me go. I'm Vincent's later wife. How dare you lay a hand on me? Her voice was shrill and piercing. One of the men restraining her lacked her in the leg and growled viciously. Shut up. If you want to live, stay quiet. Only then did Kim stop screaming, too afraid to utter another sound. She had no idea how much time had passed. All she could tell was that she had been taken into a suffocatingly sealed-off space. The air itself felt thin in there. Vincent approached and tore the blindfold off her eyes. Kim recalled reflexively in tear.
What?
Are you scared of me now? Or is it because you have done something that you are scared of facing me now? Vincent asked while gripping her chin tightly, his eyes fixed on hers. Dread and uncertainty enveloped Kim. Vincent? Why did you have me tied up? She asked, trying to sound pitiful. Are you really sure you don't know why? Do you not have a clue? He asked coldly, his grip tightening. Pain shot through her jaw, but she couldn't say a single word. Only a few muffled sobs escaped her lips. Finally, Vincent loosened his grip. Are you still going to continue your act in front of me? Did you forget all the things you have done? Where's Keira? Do you know where she is? The mention of Keira made Kim visibly falter. Her mouth opened and closed. She stammered but couldn't form coherent words. She coughed nervously and said, My parents arranged her travel plans, how would I know? Vincent's expression remained unreadable. You don't know?
Fine.
Then look at these and tell me if they look familiar. He threw a phone onto her lap. Panicking, Kim looked down at the screen. As she looked at the taunting texts she had sent in the past, her blood ran cold. Flustered, she tried to explain and justify her actions. I was just trying to stop her from pursuing you. That was why I sent those messages. I love you. Even if you mistook me for someone else, you have already married me. So, you are admitting that you drove her away, right? Vincent countered. Kim's eyes widened when she realized what she had just confessed to. She quickly covered her mouth with sheer panic written all over her face. Vincent couldn't hold back any longer. He signaled to his bodyguard, who understood his cue, and delivered a harsh slap across Kim's face. Her face swelled instantly and blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. You're a disgusting bitch. You and your parents lied to me and drove Keira away. All of my misunderstandings about Keira were your doing, weren't they? How can you be this heartless? Keira is your sister. Vincent bellowed. He grew more furious as he vented his anger so much so that he began throwing everything around him at Kim in a fit of rage. With her hand and feet tightly bound to the chair, she could not dodge the moving objects. Seeing Vincent's drastic change in attitude, Kim no longer felt the need to put on an act anymore. Instead, she began to lash out in return. You say I'm heartless? Don't forget that you implicitly allowed me to do all that. Are you truly innocent in all this? Haven't you wronged Keira too? She's not just my sister, but also the woman you love. Why couldn't you tell she was Kiki? Did you recognize her?
No.
You even made her watch as we paraded our loving relationship day in and day out. You were the one who allowed all this to happen. Now, you decided that she's pure. You are pinning all the blame on me. You are nothing but a bastard. Her words sent Vincent into a full-blown rage. He lunged forward and grabbed her by the throat. You vil bitch. How dare you talk to me like that? I'm kill you. The overwhelming pressure on Kim's neck caused her to struggle desperately as her survival instincts kicked in, but he didn't let go no matter how hard she failed her limbs. On the contrary, his grip only grew tighter. As time went on, Kim gradually stopped moving. Her lace went pale, and she collapsed onto the floor in a heap, lying there motionless. She wasn't showing any signs of life. So Vincent kicked her to check if she was still alive. Upon discovering that she was still breathing, he stopped his physical assault. He grabbed a scarf from nearby and calmly wiped the blood from his hands. Then, turning to his men, he ordered, Keep an eye on her. Make sure she doesn't die. Even after dealing with Kim and her parents, Vincent still wasn't satisfied. Now that Keira was no longer a member of the York family, he saw no reason to hold back in exacting his vengeance against them. In their absence, he aggressively acquired large amounts of York Group stock and manipulated the prices they charged for their products. The prices were so low that other companies began to boycott them. Soon the entire industry shunned York Group. But that was still far from enough. Vincent deliberately leaked the news to the three who were still imprisoned in the basement. Frank broke down on the spot and fainted. Melinda was overwhelmed with anxiety and could only pace around helplessly. After all they had put in their blood, sweat, and tears to build York Group up to what it was that day, the only one who remained unfazed was Kim. The moment she saw Vincent, she began pleading nonstop. "Vincent, please let me out. I'm sorry for everything. Don't keep me locked up here anymore. I'm so scared. There are cockroaches and rats everywhere. I swear I can feel them gnawing at my feet. Just let me out, please." "Let you out?" "Sure," Vincent sneered, his tone mocking. "It's either you or your parents who get to go free. You decide." "Of course I should be set free. They're old, and I'm still young. Besides, I wasn't the one to come up with the idea of replacing Keira. It was theirs. If you don't believe me, run an investigation." That bracelet back then was Keira, but they insisted it was mine. "Vincent, this has nothing to do with me." Vincent wasn't surprised by how quickly she shifted the blame, as he already knew how selfish she was. "Oh, I believe you, but take a look over there," he said, his smile cold. Kim turned toward the direction he pointed. It finally dawned on her that Frank and Melinda were standing right there, and they had heard every word she said. "We tried our best to give you everything. How could you betray us like this?" Frank roared with disappointment. Melinda's eyes were full of disbelief and sorrow. She never imagined the daughter she had doted on would throw them under the bus, without hesitation, behind their back. No, Mom, Dad. It's a setup. He's trying to turn us against each other." "That's not what I meant." Kim frantically tried to explain. But Vincent didn't give her a chance to say another word. He ordered his guards to take her away. "Now, do you see? That's your precious daughter. Have you finally realized what kind of person she is?" Vincent asked, leaning lazily back in his chair and savoring the devastated expressions on their faces. After leaving the basement, he instructed the guards to let Frank and Melinda go on one condition. They had to cut ties with Kim as well. Having heard her heartless words with their own ears, they agreed, without hesitation. Vincent was satisfied with this outcome. After all, he had already achieved everything he wanted. The York family had lost everything, so releasing them now meant sending them back to ruin. "Mr. Slater, what should we do with Kim?" Danny asked quietly. "She's going to experience every bit of the pain Keira suffered," Vincent said venomously. So he had people reenact everything. Kim was forced to endure the car accident, the allergic reaction, the collapsing champagne tower, drowning, and the whipping after being starved for days. She was then fed large quantities of mango, which gave her a severe allergic reaction. Ghastly hives and rashes appeared all over her body. Next, she was hit by a speeding car, resulting in her lower leg bone becoming completely shattered. She was then repeatedly thrown into Lee water and left to soak for 2 hours straight. From the top of a flight of stairs, she was pushed and seat crashing into a giant tower. Countless glass shards sliced into her flesh from every angle. She was also subjected to whipping every morning, noon, and night. In the beginning, Kim kept begging for mercy, but after being subjected to all the torture, she became numb to everything. Nevertheless, Vincent never relented. When the doctors finally confirmed that Kim had suffered a full mental breakdown and had become clinically insane, he sent her off to a psychiatric hospital. He had called ahead to tell them that they just needed to keep her alive. Everything else didn't really matter to him. The hospital director understood him perfectly and promised to take good care of her. In the days that followed, apart from continuing the search for Keira, Vincent spent most of his time at Slater Mario. This was where he had been exiled to when the Slater family deemed him useless. So it wasn't exactly a welcoming or homely abode. The roof leaked when it rained, and his room was often damp and chilly. Even so, he loved being there because it carried Keira's scent. It was the only thing that could calm his restless heart. He looked around the room, which was familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. It was familiar because her presence had once filled this space with warmth, yet it was unfamiliar because he hadn't been able to see any of it back then. Everything he had seen came from Kiki's patient guidance. She had been his only light in a world of darkness. Vincent's love for her went beyond romantic feeling. It was deeply rooted in who she was as a person. She had worried he would fall, so she taught him how to walk again and again. She had placed everything in specific position based on his habit just to make things easier for him. Although he couldn't see her love back then, he could feel her sincere and unwavering actions. Past memories flooded into his brain like a merciless tide, drowning him in regret. Tears slipped down his cheeks soundlessly. Just then Danny came to inform him that they had found Keira. She was in Ozalia and was currently preparing for an interview at a design company. Vincent's nerves immediately tensed. The days without news of her had been torment, but now that he had her location, he felt afraid. He was afraid that Keira wouldn't forgive him after all. He had failed to realize that she had been Kiki all along. He had hurt her deeply and thought that it was understandable that she would be disappointed in him. "Book me the earliest flight. I need to go to her immediately," Vincent ordered. "But with your current condition, you are not fit to go on long flights," Danny said, hesitantly concerned about Vincent's current state. Still, Vincent didn't care. Without saying another word, he stood up, straightened his clothes, and headed out. Danny didn't argue further and simply went to start the car. They drove straight to the airport. As the plane flew through the sky, it left behind streaks of white against the deep blue. At that moment, Vincent's heart was filled with nervous hope and anticipation. Meanwhile, a light drizzle had started to fall in Ozalia, ruining Keira's plan. She had planned to go out for a celebratory dinner with Stellan after passing her interview and getting the job. Upon seeing her peeved expression, Stellan offered a suggestion. "Aren't you a great cook? Since we can't go out, let's just stay in and have stew. I've got some authentic stew mix from back home. Let's try it together." His words made her smile instantly return. She said appreciatively, "I've been struggling to my specialty, oven, baked ribs with barbecue sauce." "Great. I'll do the dishes then," Stellan said, smiling. They grabbed an umbrella and headed to the supermarket to pick up some food ingredients. As they walked past a puddle, a jeep sped by, spraying muddy water in all directions. Stellan instinctively pulled Keira into his arms. "Careful." The distance between them immediately vanished. They were so close that their noses touched. Keira could smell the faint woody notes of his cologne. It was the first time she had seen him in such proximity. She couldn't help but look at his long eyelashes. Entranced by him, Keira just continued staring. Stellan's face turned bright red. He didn't dare look at her or want to let go. "Keira," he finally whispered after mustering up the courage. That jolted her out of her daze, making her suddenly aware of what she had just done. Her heart pounded so fiercely it felt like it might burst from her chest. Hastily, she changed the subject. "We're almost there. Let's hurry, or the rain will get worse." Stellan didn't say a single word. He simply followed her quietly, holding the umbrella over them. In his heart, he was secretly glad that his umbrella broke just before they headed out. The rain had completely stopped when Keira and Stellan returned from the supermarket. They strolled leisurely down the street with bags of fresh groceries, enjoying the calm atmosphere. But just as they approached the apartment building, a figure that was all too familiar entered Keira's sight. The smile on her lips slowly faltered. She had never expected that the one person she thought she would never face again, the one who had once meant everything to her, would find her here. Stellan, astute as ever, immediately noticed her change in expression. He glanced in the direction she was looking and saw Vincent standing not far away from them. Without saying a single word, he stepped in front of her protectively. Before seeing her, Vincent had been filled with anticipation, but his expression instantly turned sour when he spotted the man beside her, and when he took in Stellan's face, his anger surged. He strode forward at once. Stellan, sensing his intent, immediately stepped in to block him. "Who are you?" "That's what I should be asking. Who the hell are you?" Vincent's voice was laced with hostility. Having his way blocked only made him angrier. Nevertheless, he tried to keep his composure because he didn't want to upset Keira, who stood quietly nearby. Stellan ignored his provocation and turned to look at Keira. "Do you know this man?" She nodded calmly in response. "Do you want me to walk you home now?" Stellan asked, his voice low and concerned.
"No, it's fine."
"Let's go. Don't bother with him." Keira took a step forward, intent on leaving. "Can we talk, Keira?" Vincent spoke up. Her footsteps faltered, and Stellan seemed to understand immediately. Judging from the tension, he had more or less guessed the nature of their past. If you don't talk to him now, he probably won't let it go. I'll wait for you up ahead, he said gently. Okay, Keira replied. Stellan took the groceries from her and walked to a spot nearby to wait for her. Throughout that entire exchange, neither of them even glanced at Vincent. It was as if he were just some random stranger who had nothing to do with them. Keira finally turned to face Vincent. There's nothing left for us to talk about. You made your choice when you chose Kim. Don't bring up the past now. Her voice was cold and detached as she said that. It struck Vincent like a punch to the chest. It had been a long time since he'd spoken to her face to face. In his memory, Keira had always been gentle and soft-spoken. He had never seen her behave this uncaring and distant toward him. Keira, I'm sorry for everything. I should have realized that you were Kiki sooner. I should have listened. Can you forgive me? I know you might still resent me for what happened with Kim, but she's already paid for everything she did. I found out the truth and returned it tenfold. Can we start over, please? I've missed you so much. Vincent's voice was full of humility and regret. There was also a slight involuntary tremble as he spoke. Ever since he discovered that truth, it felt like something in his heart had shattered beyond repair. He had waited desperately for days in hopes of hearing news of her. All he wanted was to get to her and see her as soon as possible. His eyes shone with yearning. But Keira didn't answer right away. She simply stared at him wordlessly. He averted his eyes, unable to meet her gaze any longer. Only after several long minutes did Keira finally speak. You know, Vincent, I liked you since high school. The time we spent together was most unforgettable parts of my life. It was almost too beautiful, too surreal. I always hoped you recognized me just by instinct, or, at the very least, give me 1 minute to hear me out, but that never happened. I thought it all through. The past is no more. We should just let it go. Vincent was at a loss. Keira, he opened his mouth to speak, but had no idea what to say. In the end, that sentence was left hanging. Keira continued, Vincent, the moment I decided to let go, I already knew I wouldn't regret it. Keira turned and walked away. I loved you once, without looking back anymore. While Vincent stood firm as he watched her make her way to Stellan. A wave of crushing regret washed over him. Before arriving in here, he had pictured countless possibilities. As long as she was willing to come back to him, he was ready to do whatever it took, but not in any one of the possibility. She had stood before him and told him she no longer loved him. His heart sank to his stomach. He felt inexplicably cold all over. After that day, Keira never saw Vincent again. She only heard he had sold his company and disappeared. No one knew where he went. Sometime later, Frank and Melinda tried to contact her, but all she did was mail them the parental disownment agreement they had once sent to her right back to them. She would be lying if she said that she didn't feel anything for them. They were still her family after all, but no matter what, she no longer intended to have any further interactions with them. To her, this was all part of a past life that was long gone. A year later, Keira opened a small studio of her own with a few like-minded friends. It was more tiring than working at a company, but she was finally living the life she had once dreamed of, and with that came a deep level of satisfaction and self-actualization. She was eager to celebrate with Stellan on the studio's opening day. She knocked on his door, but there was no answer. Feeling puzzled, she called him. However, he didn't pick up. Just then a news alert popped up on her screen. It read, Black Pagani rear-ended at high-speed, driver killed instantly. Her heart skipped a beat. Stellan had just turned 25, and his birthday present to himself was a black Pagani. Keira didn't even stop to read the article. She immediately hailed a cab and rushed toward the accident site. She had never felt this panicked in her life. At every red light, she silently prayed for his safety over and over again. When she arrived, the police had surrounded the area. She tried to push past, but an officer stopped her. She quickly explained that she knew the car owner and that she needed to see him. The officer asked her what their relationship was. She blurted out without hesitation that the man was her boyfriend. The officer was taken aback when he heard that. He pulled up the crash victim details to confirm with her the photo ID was of a drug trafficker who had suffered a heart attack while behind the wheel, which led to the crash. In an instant, relief washed over Keira. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the ground. Meanwhile, after receiving a strange call from the police, Stellan arrived at the scene, utterly confused. When he saw the remains of the total black Pagani, he quickly connected the dots and guessed what must have happened. He rushed over and pulled Keira into his arms. "Don't be scared, Keira, I'm here now. I've come to take you home." Tears blurred her vision as she clung to him. "Stellan, where did you go? I was looking everywhere for you. I was so worried. I want to set up a surprise for you. I was going to confess to you today," Stellan sheepishly admitted. "Were you planning to confess to me in my office?" she asked through choked sobs. "How did you know?" Stellan's eyes widened slightly. "I have security cameras." Stellan smacked his forehead.
He'd completely forgotten about that.
She'd already seen what he was up to, but she had kept quiet so as not to ruin it for him. "So, do you accept my confession?" Stellan asked. He took a small box from his pocket, and inside was a ring. Keira stared at the ring in a daze. "I thought that this was just a confession. Why is there a ring?" "It's all the same. Either way, I will propose to you eventually," Stellan said steadily with certainty. His firm tone made her tear up again, moving and elating her. "I'll have to think it over properly. Take your time." The sunlight filtered through the leaves of the nearby trees, casting a gentle glow over Stellan. In that moment, Keira felt that the missing part of her heart was slowly being restored. Stellan was the irreplaceable ray of light that made it whole again.
The end.